Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to feature my recent conversation with DeMario Moore and Jen Bundy. DeMario and Jen are first-year students in our full-time MBA class of 2022, and they are also newly elected DSA representatives. They are the president and executive vice president of the organization, respectively. Recently connected with DeMario and Jen to talk more about their backgrounds, what led them to Darden, and what they hope to accomplish with DSA in the coming year. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here's my interview with DeMario Moore and Jen Bundy. DeMario, Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us. Really excited to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, first and foremost, how are you doing? How's everything? DeMario, how are you doing?
I would say I'm doing okay, to be quite honest. Things are pretty busy with DSA. Also have some personal things going on, but I would say that I have a solid group of friends and a support system here at Darden and outside of Darden. So that's really been able to, keep me moving throughout the day.
All right. And Jen, how are you doing?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think it's been busy. And I think for the first 3 quarters at Darden, I had a routine, I had my learning team, I had a rhythm. And I think that Q4 really throws that all out the window. And so I'm just trying to readjust and then plan for the summer. So definitely a lot going on.
Our listeners of the podcast know that, or perhaps know, quarter 4 is when you start taking electives as a first year student. So you come out of the core, maybe things slow down just a little bit, although maybe not for y'all with the DSA and all this stuff going on. So curious about one of my favorite questions over the past year with students has been, have people found an opportunity for hobbies or interests in the pandemic, picked up anything new? Jen, have you, I know you've been busy, so you may not have had time for this, but we've had a lot of like puzzling and paint by numbers and just getting outside. Anything that you picked up in the pandemic?
So I would say I discovered that I very much don't like puzzles. I ordered a bunch and thought I'd become a puzzle person and realized quickly, maybe 10 minutes into my first puzzle, that I, in fact, don't like puzzles. One thing I would say that I got more into was cooking. I'm not a very good cook, but early in the pandemic, I downloaded an app that had all of the classic recipes that one should know by the time they're 27 or maybe even younger. But I've been practicing some of the staples, so I can make really, really good scrambled eggs. That's where I'm at in my cooking journey so far.
I'm a little fearful as to what I should have known how to cook when I was 27. So what's your scrambled egg recipe? What's your secret?
You have to spend time. So I think a lot of people rush through breakfast, and if you want to make good scrambled eggs, you have to spend 30 minutes. You have to use butter, use milk, really make them creamy. And so it might not be the healthiest version of scrambled eggs, but it definitely tastes the best. But definitely have to have a solid 30 minutes to spend on them.
Trust the process, in other words.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. And DeMario, how about you? You picked up any pastimes, hobbies on the way over this past year?
Yes, I would say the biggest thing I picked up has just been journaling. So just getting my thoughts out on paper. I suffered from imposter syndrome for a very long point of time. So being able to journal, I'm able to express that. And then also just dealing with, the rigorous program here at Darden. Again, we've been in the core for the past 3 quarters. So that was definitely a high stress situation. So being able to get it onto paper, taking a step back to reflect on it, it's just really been really helpful for me.
Well, I appreciated that. Is that a new thing for you? Did you just start journaling, or have you done it before?
Yeah, it's new. Like, I never saw myself as being a person to really want to get my thoughts on paper. So really just, doing like a ton of self-reflection, because it's hard work and you have to hold yourself accountable with doing it. And I'm one, where it could be hard to kind of get on this train of writing things down and holding myself accountable to it. But now that I journal, I find it a lot easier to have accountability and also find some accountability partners. So it's been really good.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's always fun to hear what people have gotten into and what you're spending your time on outside of Darden. So thank you for indulging that question. This is also a chance for you to talk about yourselves a little bit and share your stories. So Jen, I'll come to you first on this line of questioning. Tell us a little bit more about your background before Darden. Where are you from, and what did you do before showing up in Charlottesville?
Yeah, so I am from Rhode Island, which is my favorite state. I could probably talk about Rhode Island for forever. So I'm from a town called Cumberland, Rhode Island, which is not a famous part of Rhode Island, but a great town nonetheless. And I went to school in upstate New York at Syracuse University. That's where a lot of my family's from. I'd been going there a lot growing up, and so it was fun to go back up to that region. And honestly, at college, I essentially thought that it would be very fun to get interested in politics. I was a political science major, definitely took some business courses, but certainly was not a business major. And after graduation, I moved down to DC. And I guess I should mention before that, I had done one internship in DC working on the Hill for a summer. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to dedicate my life to doing that, which was unfortunate because I was a junior and I had already set my major as political science. And so when I graduated and moved to DC, I was a little bit lost and wasn't really sure what I should be doing. I knew I liked DC. And so I figured, let's just go there, go to a big city. Coming from a smaller town, that was going to be, my big journey and adventure. And so ended up in sales. And I spent 5 years working in higher ed, actually, where I would travel 5 days a week and go all over the country and meet with college presidents and ask them tough questions about their strategy and their plans and essentially try to sign them on as new clients. And it was really fun. Growing up, my family didn't really travel a ton outside of maybe Florida and New England. And so being able to visit 48 of the 50 states was super exciting. And I've likely visited with almost every college, you could think of. And if I haven't been there, I've at least heard of it. And so that was really, really fun for me. And part of the reason I decided to go get an MBA, I think, was because I loved my job. I loved meeting people. I loved working with people. But I really wanted to see more of the impact. When you're in sales, sometimes you're really, really involved in the front end of the conversation, but then you miss some of the relationship building or the actual impact. And I think I really felt that. And I guess another area that I sort of got involved in through work was, for a while, I was working with big universities like UVA. And I actually made the case to my company that we should really think about the small schools, the ones that really are struggling, the ones that really do need the most help, but maybe historically, weren't able to sign on to be a client for whatever reason. And so I spent a lot of my time with these schools, and sometimes I like to refer to them as sort of the underdog schools, even though they have so much promise and they're doing amazing things. But I really made the case to work with these schools. And I think that bled over into my personal life in DC, where I was living in a neighborhood that I would say was one of the ones that is overlooked. So I was in Columbia Heights in Washington, DC, very diverse neighborhood, an amazing neighborhood, but not the neighborhood that DC is really investing in terms of economic development. And so I actually ran and was involved in local politics in that neighborhood in DC, and really felt that coming to Darden would be an awesome opportunity to combine my passion for helping underdog communities and underdog schools and my business skills, and trying to figure out a way to get involved in economic development in the future to, really give it a second chance and reinvest in the communities that I believe in, but maybe don't have the investment they need right now. So that was the impetus for me applying to business school.
So you mentioned going to 48 out of 50 states. Have you gone all 50 now, or is it total count? Or what are the two that remain?
Hawaii and Alaska. Never been outside the sort of, the continental states. And so, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on states.
Well, we'll have to bring you back on the podcast to do state by state rundown. So, so DeMario, how about you? Now, for our listeners, sweatshirts don't always come through on the podcast, but I do just want to let everybody know DeMario is wearing a Detroit versus everybody sweatshirt. So tell us your story. What did you do before coming to Darden?
Yes, so I'm originally from Detroit, as is my sweatshirt. It was actually created by an alumni at my school. I went to Cass Tech for high school. So born and raised in Detroit, first generation college student. I went to Central Michigan University for undergrad. I started off as a computer science major, I thought I wanted to be a computer scientist, get into engineering, did that for a year. And I said, you know what? This is not it. So then I switched my major to finance, ended up going the business route. Coming out of CMU, I started my career at Deloitte Consulting, so fresh out. Deloitte was not a sponsor of CMU, so we were looked at as the underdogs, as Jen kind of mentioned, earlier today. So that was definitely a blessing, being able to go into organization for internship and then also getting a full-time offer. So 5 years I worked there in consulting. I did a lot of financial planning and analysis work early on, and then I switched over to their human capital practice, where I did a lot of change management work, worked a lot with doing ERP implementations and really getting, our audiences to understand, what is change management, how does this impact our organization, and what is that people element. And from there, I pivoted over to a startup because I wanted to change space. I wanted to get more into the digital space. And there I did more product management, product strategy, and then also did some internal diversity, equity, inclusion work. And being at the startup, the biggest difference from Deloitte was it was less buttoned down. I was able to wear t-shirts every day. Those are things that started sparking this passion in me that there was more to life and me just being able to be my authentic self. So at that organization, I ended up partnering with our COO to build out our DEI strategy. And with that, I started to understand how different parts of the business operated. So that started to strike my passion for wanting to get my MBA. So coming here to Darden has definitely been a blessing. Being able to work with people like Jen and within this community, I've been able to push myself to grow. This summer I'll be going to Danaher, which is their Beckman Coulter operating company. So it's going to be in Miami, and I'll be working as a product manager. So super, super excited about the opportunity and looking forward to the warm weather and, getting out of the Midwest.
I appreciate all of that. So we're going to stay with you for this next question. What about Darden in particular resonated with you as you were considering your options, DeMario? What brought you specifically to Darden?
Yeah, I would say for Darden, I was hesitant, to be completely transparent at first. Me being from Detroit, living in Chicago, it's much more diverse than Darden is. And when I came to the diversity conference back in 2019, I was chatting with Mark Paulo Guzman, like he just left Darden. He was over the consortium, which is an organization that really champions, underrepresented minority groups. So spoke with Mark Paulo a lot, came here to Darden. And when I saw the infrastructure and just the land and the buildings, it was very reminiscent of just being in the South and just pictures and things I would see in movies. I was like, okay, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I started having open conversations with people within the consortium, Donna Clark, and others, just about my experience of what it means to be Black and then also a queer man. And from that started to sparking conversations where people were very transparent and talking about the work that Darden was doing to progress diversity and inclusion. And from there, I was able to ask a lot of tough questions during the conference. And I had students that literally reached out to me after the conference. We set up weekly calls. When it came down to me applying, I had the most support from Darden throughout that entire process. And I know some schools are more hands-off, but I feel like Darden was very hands-on with me in terms of the students and the community with charting my path to be here.
That's great. And I'm glad you were able to ask those tough questions. I think that's important for people. I mean, oftentimes, as our prospective students are considering this path, they have questions about life in Charlottesville, what the school is like, all these kinds of things. And we do find that you reference some members of our admissions team, but nothing quite like engaging with the students here and kind of hearing firsthand that perspective. It's one of the reasons why we have the podcast. Jen, how about for you? What led you to Darden?
Yeah, I think at first it was just that Darden was near DC. And so I applied because I thought, this is near DC and I'm applying to business school. It wasn't until because I'd never visited before I applied. And then when I actually went to do my interview, I remember I was very intimidated because, this is a very, prestigious university. I didn't come from a business background. I was insecure about, my test scores and all parts of my application that I thought, I'm not going to stand out to any of these people at this school. But I remember when I came for my tour, I got to do a tour with a second year at the time, who right off the bat was so welcoming, so kind, and immediately talked about her experience being a fashion designer and how she had never taken accounting and how she was doing so well at Darden, and that there was all these supports that even if you don't have that business background, they still welcome you, want you here. And I think similar to DeMario's experience, I felt that after that first interview and that tour, and even once I was accepted, everybody was so supportive of, here's what you need to do to really vet Darden. And we want to talk to you and ask us the tough questions and maybe talk about why there's not, gender equity necessarily in terms of the numbers of women at Darden. And what is it really like being in a section where it's 70% men? And I think that was really helpful and made me feel like I belonged. And I think sometimes you just go to a place and you get a feeling in your gut that, I think I'll really like it here. And I think that's how I felt about Darden, and was, I guess one of the last things I'll say is once I got accepted, I got so many calls from alumni from Darden, and that really stood out to me, that alums would take the time to call me and encourage me and congratulate me and really welcome me into the community. And I think that was really distinctive about Darden, and made me excited about not only the 2 years I'll have on campus, but the time I'll have in the network beyond that.
I think there's so much goodness in what both of y'all have said. I want to come back to some of these topics as we move through the conversation. And one of my sort of things that I've sort of reiterated here on the podcast is people always want to make the decision as to where they want to pursue an MBA. It's kind of like intellectual, data-driven thing, but invariably there's also an intuitive element to it, right? You can see yourself there. You can really sort of visualize you being successful at this place. And so I appreciate all your points here. So I'm going to stay with you, Jen, for this next question as you kick us off here. So you come to Darden, your first year students. What was that like? Learning curves, anything that you had to adjust to over the past year?
Yeah, I mean, of course, this year was probably a year like any other. So I think the entire campus was in the process of managing expectations and trying to have us have a normal first year experience in a year where nothing is normal. And that I think was challenging. So of course, adding that into coming to business school, and suddenly I'm taking accounting and finance, and I have never really taken that many accounting or finance classes. And you're in the room in your section with people who were literally investment bankers for 8 years before they came to Darden. And so I remember feeling really overwhelmed, and I definitely felt like the weakest link even on my learning team, because they have on your learning team, which is, for those that don't know, a group of students that you're assigned to essentially, and you work almost every night to complete the coursework for the next day. And I love my learning team 19. And initially, I was really intimidated. And I think I had a lot of that imposter syndrome of, I do not know necessarily what, a credit swap is. And I don't know, LIFO and FIFO and all these accounting terms. But I went to tutoring. Everyone should go to tutoring. There's no shame in going to tutoring. I went to tutoring. I reached out to professors individually. Second years, reached out to me individually. And I feel like I really had a lot of support, especially in those early days when I was so confused in those quant classes. And another element I'll say is just adjusting to school. So what's really scary, I think, about business school is a lot of us come from cities where we've lived for 5 years. We have our crew, we have money, we're working. And then now I'm in this new place that's not a city. I have no friends and, I'm overwhelmed. And so I think that was a huge adjustment too, of just trying to find your people here, trying to meet people. And then you add in, a pandemic and different dynamics there. I think all of that was definitely a big learning curve.
And that's one of the things we talk about a lot is that, people are coming to Charlotte. So it's a relocation, right? So you're kind of uprooting from where you are, you're here. It's one of the reasons why I think the social community here is a bit stickier, because everybody recognizes that, hey, this is your group. You got to find your people here. And so, but yeah, it's an adjustment. How about you, DeMario? What has this first year been like? As Jen notes, a year unlike any other, given the externalities.
Yeah, I feel like, Jen, that was a slam dunk. I want to echo everything you said. That was a slam dunk. I want to start with saying that first. But I would say, as Jen mentioned, this was a very tough year. We had the pandemic, and Darden having to pivot to figure out, how to navigate that and learning as we go. And I call that, being agile. And that's hard to do. And, we had the students having to pivot as well and go through this experience. Me, myself, I was furloughed from work April 1st, which was roughly 2 weeks after COVID had really hit back in like mid-March. We went to the grocery store. I had come back from vacation. There was literally no food in the store. So when that happened, I had to think about, well, what's next? So you have people that come here and they're focusing on the core during their first year, like Jen and myself, but you have all these other issues going on. You have family members that are dying. You're dealing with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and doing that coupled with a rigorous program is very hard. And, once you transition from it being to fall until winter is coming, then it's dark outside, and now COVID is here. So you have more mental health cases. So you feel isolated, alone, and by yourself. But I would say the saving grace is we have such a strong community here where people were able to quickly develop resilience and think about innovative ways for us to get together in person and in small, intimate groups. So you had a support system. I've had friends here that have definitely picked me up in some of my darkest hours where I was feeling very down. And those are the things that you latch onto, and those are the things that kind of get you through this. And I think that even though COVID was a bad thing globally, I think there's some beauty that came from it as well. Like we thought about ways for us to get together more. We thought about ways for us to figure out, what's most important? Family, being able to do these classes, virtually or doing a hybrid format, which a lot of schools didn't have. So I just think that for me personally, it was tough. It was a steep learning curve for the cases. I echo everything Jen said, but I had a strong support system with the students and also the faculty members.
I appreciate, y'all have been so candid here, and I have really appreciate this. One of the things I love about hosting these conversations on the podcast is just how much goodness there is for our prospective student listeners and sort of hearing the journey for students. It's not all perfect all the time, but there's struggles along the way. But the thing that I'm hearing from both of you as we go through this conversation is that you found a way through. You leaned on people in your life. They helped you out, and you're here. And one of the things that you're doing now is you're part of that sort of leadership narrative at Darden, right? You are DSA, Darden Student Association leaders. That's incredible. First and foremost, congratulations. How does it feel, DeMario?
Thank you. Honestly, I feel like it feels great. It feels great. Jen knows like how much this meant to me running for it. And me approaching Jen for us to run together. For me, being DSA president EVP it's the highest honor that I look at being at Darden, because you're elected by the student body and you're literally managing all of the clubs and you're speaking directly to faculty, administration, working with the dean, and also just championing all those voices in the community and thinking about prospective students and alumni and how to better engage with them. So for me, it's hard to like really sum up in enough words like what it means, but I would say like it's an honor and it's a pleasure.
Jen, how about for you? What's it mean to be executive vice president of the DSA?
Yeah, I echo everything that DeMario has said. It's definitely, such an honor to have the student body put their confidence in us to be their advocates and to listen to them and to make next year the best it can be. And we take that super seriously. And we really want to be collaborative and really listen to what the community needs and then try to put that into action. And honestly, I think DeMario and I are both very action oriented, I'll say. And so we have this energy, we have these ideas, and I'm honestly just really excited to get started. We've only technically been the president and EVP for about less than a week actually at this point. And so we're really early into this, but I'm really, really excited for what's to come.
So you run as a team, right? That's how it works? The two
Yes.
of you were on a ticket. How did you connect with each other and say, I think we should do this? Jen, do you want to share that story?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was involved in my section leadership. I was a Section A social rep. And this year that was a lot of work because you didn't just plan one event, you had to plan, 9 separate events that followed the safety guidelines. And honestly, I felt a little bit burnt out. And I said, I said, I'm not going to be in charge of anything next year. I'm just going to coast and have a good time. But, I still was very passionate about what Darden could be next year and had a lot of ideas. And so I had actually sent an email totally just out of the blue and just as a random student. And I sent it to some of the leadership here at Darden and said, here's some ideas I have for second year orientation, and just listed them out. And I had copied, a few folks on that email, and I think it got into DeMario's hands. And so then he, had reached out and said, I saw your email. I like the energy, would you want to run with me? And initially I said no. I was like, no, I'm trying to not be in charge. But the more and more I talked to DeMario, and I think it became more appealing. And I totally credit DeMario with instilling in me sort of the confidence to run. I think something that was really blocking me was, should I put myself forward? Like, there's other people that might want to do this, and does it have to be me? And just feeling, again, that sort of imposter syndrome. So it was amazing to really have him believe in me, which made me more excited to run as a ticket, knowing that confidence that he had. And yeah, it was, I think once we started talking more, I was like, this could work, and we can have fun, and we can be a team, and we can really accomplish a lot of the things that both DeMario and I care about so much. And so that was really sort of the impetus of us running together. And DeMario, I don't know if you agree or have any other thoughts on that.
I agree completely, Jen. Like, that is literally it. I think that our story is very powerful to tell, because people may assume like we just came together and said, okay, we want to do this because we have contributed to our community, but it was opposite. And like Jen said, and we think about COVID, it's been a very rough year. Your first year is rough, and doing it during, COVID was, it made it worse. And I think that for me, when it came down to, in terms of running, I had a few people that reached out and asked me because they kind of like expected, and I said, no, I didn't want to do it. Very similar to Jen. And then I spoke to Layleen. She was my marketing professor during core, and we had like our monthly touch point, and we were just checking in. And I had went through some dark moments over the past couple of like months, and I was in a very happy place. And we were enjoying ourselves in our conversation, had like a hug and cry virtually on Zoom. And then she asked me if I would consider running. I told her no. And her question was, is this imposter syndrome? Again, these are things I definitely suffer with. And I told her like, no, I don't think it's that. I just don't think I want to commit to this. And after we left our conversation, I said I would think about it. I reflected on it. I said, you know what? I want to do it. And I saw the email that Jen had sent and had got into my hands, like she said, and I reached out. And I won't repeat a lot of what she said, but what I will say is that I spoke to a number of candidates outside of Jen, and I was very upfront with every person I spoke with. I said, Jen is my number one pick. If Jen says she wants to do it, I'm going to drop everyone right now. We're going to run for it, because what I love about Jen, as she mentioned, we're very action oriented. And even beyond that, when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and making Darden feel like home, Jen embodies that, like, completely. When I think about my vision, our vision is one and the same, like it's magic. And it's crazy. Like, I was just like, wow, like this girl is phenomenal. Like, you have to do this. Like, you're thinking about sitting back and not doing anything. Like, no, you need to run by my side. We need to make this place fun. We need to bring back some energy. We want to make people feel like they belong here. And I know we can do it. So I'm just thankful that I was able to push her, but she also pushed me, because even though we just transitioned completely a little over a week ago, the day we got elected, the work started. We started getting added on to meetings, and I've had personal things I was dealing with at certain points, and Jen is a rock star. Like, she gets it done. So I'm just so grateful that we're doing this together.
I'm so grateful, DeMario. You're a rock star too. I think it'll be fun. I'm so excited.
Yes.
So this is what happens when two reluctant candidates find each other and become the DSA president and executive vice president. So we'll talk a little bit about underdogs, because you both talked about your passion for underdogs and maybe people that might be overlooked and not thought of initially. And so how is that influencing the work that you're thinking about with the DSA? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But DeMario, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit little bit about your vision for the organization and maybe how you're thinking about your passion for underdogs.
Yes, I would say underdogs are definitely top of mind. When we think about the MBA experience, especially here at Darden, I would say there's probably two groups of people that tend to get majority of the focus in terms of industry and career-wise, and that's consulting and investment banking. That's what a lot of students come to, get the MBA for, specifically here at Darden. So what we would like to do is to really focus on those other areas that people are very passionate about, but they may not feel as equally supported. You have your big consulting firms, your big banks. So what about the smaller ones? As I mentioned, I started my career at a Big Four organization. I went over to a startup and I thrived and I loved it. And there are a lot of people that want to go to startups, want to go to these smaller places that have a different cross-collaborative culture and having that servant leadership mindset. So that's definitely a part of our vision.
Jen, how about you? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think the career element is huge. And then also just the community element. I think COVID and the pandemic made it very hard for folks to really get to know each other, of course. And so one of our big goals is to have everyone feel at home. So I don't believe that anyone's necessarily, obviously, the underdog at Darden, but it's more about how are you having people believe they belong here and believe that, they can succeed here. Because obviously that's something that DeMario and I struggle with and probably will in the future. But what's important for us is that we as leaders make everyone feel like they're included. And that's giving people a voice, having a seat at the table, hosting events that, will bring folks together from different groups and different backgrounds, and really making sure that we're constantly thinking about how we can be inclusive and just having that be at the forefront, especially after a year where it's textbook not possible to be inclusive if you're mandating that only 6 people can meet in a group. And we really want to make sure that we're changing the narrative and hopefully bringing back some of that energy in a way where everyone feels that they belong here.
So I was thinking about the DSA's goal for this past year is for all students to feel included and loved, I believe is the goal. Does that align with what you're thinking about too? It sounds like it might, Jen.
Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about, this past year has been really hard, and business school in general is hard. And we want people to feel like they have the support of the community, but then also of the DSA. We want to be visible and there because a lot of folks are going to look for help at some point throughout their journey at Darden, and we want to be there and really make sure that we're sending that note and that energy and just feeling of belonging and love. I think that's a great way to sort of talk about things. It's important.
DeMario, any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. I think that this truly resonates for me. A little over a month ago, I did a session with Dean Solomon. He's at the BAT Institute, and it was with Humans of UVA, which is an initiative that I'm working on here at UVA, which basically is going to bring all the graduate programs together. So thinking about creating that sense of community. And during the session that we had with Dean Solomon, he spoke for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. And we talked about just leadership and having love being at the center of your leadership and how powerful it is. We're thinking about other communities. So when Jen and I ran, we mentioned that during our speech, how love is going to be at the center, because love is the common language that brings everyone together. It doesn't matter where you're from geographically. So if we're able to embed that in our DNA here at Darden and embed it within our mission within DSA, that's going to transcend throughout this entire community. So that's definitely our goal. We want to make this place feel like home for people. We want people to feel like they're included, they're a part of the conversation. And as Jen said, having a seat at the table.
Well, what are you looking forward to in the months to come? I mean, you've got summers lined up. DeMario, you mentioned you're heading to Miami. What are you looking forward to?
Like, to be honest, like I am super excited to get to Miami this summer. Like I can't understate that or overstate it actually. But I am so excited to get to Miami for the summer. Darden is a beautiful place, a beautiful community. I'm a person that really loves the big city, and it's been great being here, but I think that just having like a break, going to a bigger city, where there's a little bit more diversity, and being outside of this bubble, I think it's going to do good things for me as it relates to my mental health. So really having some sun, being able to go to the beaches. I've already got one of my vaccines. I'm going to get the next one in a couple of weeks. So that's getting me very excited. And then I'm also excited because the role I'm going to go into is going to be a product manager role. So I did product for roughly 3 years for Darden. It wasn't a part of my goal to go back into product, but I'm going into general management. And with that, you're going to touch different parts of the business. But as I've been inside of the classroom, I'm starting speaking on my experiences, I realized like, actually, I love doing product management. I love talking about agile and what that means and how to get people to adopt these methodologies. So I'm truly excited for that.
Jen, how about you? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so I am going to be going to New York City for the summer for a consulting internship, which is a total pivot. I've never done consulting. And so I'm excited to see what that's like, to meet the other interns that are going up there, to see if I like this career. And I think it'll be really fun also to be in New York City. I have never lived in New York City. I'm honestly a little intimidated, but I'm also excited. I think it'll be an awesome opportunity to see what living there is like and actually get a sense for if I want that to be, the city that I'm in after Darden. And I'm also just excited because I feel like this is going to be the summer of reunions. I had all these weddings that were planned last year of my friends and family. Those are all rescheduled for later this summer and in the fall. And I think this summer, if everything goes, according to plan, or if things continue to look positive, it's just going to be reuniting with people that I love, that I haven't been able to see. And I think that is what I'm most excited for, just reconnecting after a year where I could only see so many people on Zoom. And so I'm so excited for that.
So you both have a lot to look forward to here over the next few months. Last question, same last question we ask of all our guests here on the podcast. What's a piece of advice that you would share with prospective students, something that you would encourage them to think about? Jen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I guess this is just a practical piece of advice that I've done everywhere that I've worked. I think you should create a folder in your email that's called Greatness. And anytime that you get a compliment or someone calls out your great work or you do well on a project, put it in that folder so that when there's a time when you're feeling down, you feel like you don't belong, you feel like an imposter, you can go to that folder and be reminded of your success. And I've literally been doing this for years. And so I have a folder that has my Darden acceptance. I have a folder that has, times when I did well in class and a professor reached out afterwards and said, you're learning accounting, great job. So do that. And I think that's a really good reminder of just remembering to be kind to yourself and complimenting yourself and hyping yourself up the way you would anyone else and, your best friend. So that's one piece of practical advice. And I think that just goes into my general advice of putting yourself out there. And if you're on campus, you belong here, and reminding yourself. Some part of it for me was faking it till I made it, and literally going into class and just trying, asking questions in finance and putting myself out there, even though I was confused, but believing that it's okay to be confused and it's okay to ask questions in class and not feel like that means, you don't belong here. So I think that would be my general advice.
Two great pieces of advice. DeMario, how about you?
Yeah, Jen, that was great. I know that was for prospective students, but the creating the folder, I'm going to take that myself because that is a really great idea. So I'm going to start that today. I'll say for prospective students, some advice I would give them, I would say first is do a lot of self-reflection and figure out what it is that you want to get out of your MBA experience, whether it's your involvements here on campus, connecting with family, that are not here maintaining those relationships, or even what, field you want to go into, what companies you're thinking about. Really hone in on that, because once you get here on grounds, there's a ton of companies that are going to be throwing themselves at you. And sometimes it's easier to get lost in that. So just like really take some time to understand that. The second thing I would say is think about your current group of friends and people you've been around for the past couple of years or throughout your life and how comfortable you are with that, and allow yourself to be comfortable with being uncomfortable and exposing yourself to other cultures and groups, and really being intentional on doing that. So when you get here, you're able to build a global perspective. And with that, you're able to allow others to have a seat on the table. That goes back to Jen and I goals with DSA. So the more prospective students that come in with that mindset, when you're in the classroom, take a step back to think about, well, how does this group of people feel towards this? Practicing that empathy, I think that's really going to, challenge the status quo. And then I would say the last thing is have fun when you get here. You're going to be in core. Core is hard, but give yourself some grace, give yourself opportunities to have fun, because your network is going to be the community you build here, and you can't put a price tag on that.
Well, thank you both. This has really been an incredible conversation. We've covered so much ground, and appreciate your passion for the work that you're doing on behalf of students here at Darden. The DSA is the only student organization that effectively represents all the Darden students. And so that is incredible just to hear the energy, the passion you have. And so really appreciate your coming on the podcast to share your stories, your backgrounds, and of course, so much great advice. So DeMario, Jen, stay safe. Good luck in the months ahead. Have a great time in Miami and in New York City, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. This was great.
And that was my interview with DeMario Moore and Jen Bundy, two first-year students in our full-time MBA class of 2022. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.